Hope you had a fabulous weekend. You know the deal. I'm going to start with Stephen A. here, though. Stephen A., how do you think players should feel about 17 games?
Be the men that they are. Stop complaining about this. Last time I checked, this was the National Football League. It was collectively bargained. It was in the new collective bargaining agreement signed in March. Everybody knew it was coming. It's something that's been, hinted towards for years. Not only to mention that, but keep in mind that in the day and age where things are consistently modified in the interest of generating more revenue, the NFL hadn't changed from a 16-game schedule since 1978. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what is that, 43 years? What the hell is your problem? Get over it. You knew it was coming. Now, there's going to be one less preseason game. There's going to be one additional regular season game. We certainly understand that safety is a priority, and that should never be ignored, and that should never be shoved aside. Under no circumstances am I saying that. But adjustments are made all the time. Sometimes you see guys, in the NBA, for a perfect example, we call it load management, Max. That's what we call it, Dan Orlovsky. But guess what? You got guys that ain't playing every game. Now, certainly there's only 17 games in the NFL season, so chances are you don't want to hear that nonsense. But in the NFL, we see people getting injured all the time. We see games being missed by players all the time. What's wrong with taking a game off for rest? What's wrong with making sure that none of your players plays more than 16 games? Just because you as a coach has to coach 17 games, as an organization you have to play 17 games, doesn't mean all your starters have to play 17 games. You can sit up there and work that out. You got practice squad players. You got dudes on the scouting team. You got your starting lineup. You got your role players. You can work around one additional game. If it's going to generate revenue for you as well as the league, and the public doesn't appear to mind it, then be the men that you are, grow the hell up, and accept the fact that this is what comes with it. You knew, because as players, you collectively bargained for this, and the NFL knew, you knew what the NFL wanted. You signed off on it, and that is that.
Well, I don't buy the collective bargaining argument because they're bargaining against a monopoly for all intents and purposes. The NFL has a monopoly on professional football, really worldwide. If you're among the best football players in the world, you're going to make the most money by far in the NFL because they own football, basically, especially in North America. So they're always going to push for more games because it's more revenue for them. The owners don't have to work any harder. Every time the players are going to want something going forward, they're going to put that on the table. And eventually they'll get another game. They'll be 18 and 19 and 20. It'll never end. And here's the reason why. Because the owners understand the players are fungible commodities. When there were scab players in the early 80s, when I was a kid, Stephen A., the ratings took a hit. But it wasn't like they cut in half. They went down 20-something%, something like that. People still watched football. And if careers get shorter for players, they're not going to care. They'll just get new players in there. And it's going to be hard to tell the difference in quality because it's not that great between the very best and that next little level below. Maybe Dan Orlovsky can tell, but guys like you and me, it's going to look more or less the same. They understand that. So to hell with the players. They'll have shorter careers. They'll get more banged up. It's laughable when you talk about whether they're concerned for player safety. In boxing, they went from unlimited rounds of fights, right? Like until someone fell, to like 20-plus rounds. Then they cut it to 15 rounds, which we knew for many years. Now it's 12 rounds. That's worried about safety. Let's make these fights shorter and shorter because it's dangerous to get hit so much. NFL's going in the opposite direction. Let's add more and more to the schedule. Now, Stephen A., I like your idea. If they want to add more games, they should institute rules that even if you have 17 and eventually 18 and 19 games, but each player can only play 15 games. Or 16 games, or 14 games. And you got to work the roster around that. Maybe you expand the rosters, creating more jobs, but you have to have some kind of companion rules to go along with the ever-expanding schedule. They will always want to expand the schedule to hell with the players because that's how they'll make more money.
Yeah, I think 85% of the players in the NFL will be upset about this because they're the guys that aren't making all the money, made up of the guys that are going to see the growth of salary cap. What this will do will grow the salary cap. And so the highest paid players will receive more money. Those are the guys that are actually going to feel it in their wallet. And the league minimum guys are not going to feel the growth in revenue. But Stephen A., this is where I'm going to come after you a little bit. You can't say grow up and tell your feelings to move on. You can't say that to your knees and your ankles and your back and your ACLs. And that's what's going to feel the brunt of this is guys' bodies. You can't say, well, the NBA does load management. One game is in or out of the playoffs for so many teams in the NFL. In the NBA, when you play 82 games, you can load manage a game or two because you're not going to feel it when it comes to actually getting into the dance or not. The Dolphins were 10-6 last year, and they didn't get in. Sitting a quarterback or a big-time defensive lineman or a dynamic wide receiver could be the difference between getting in or getting out. So load management is not something that could factor into the NFL. Now, what is the trade-off for the players? That's the big question of this. Is there going to be, you talked about the one less preseason game. You know who's going to probably play the same amount of preseason snaps? Those league minimum guys. The starters and the high revenue guys are going to play the same amount of snaps, whether it's 4 games or 3 games. Is there going to be a significant change to the offseason? Is there going to be, when I got into the NFL 17 years ago, 16 years ago, we started our offseason like March 20th, and we went all the way to July 4th. Right. That has even shortened. So are they going to do more Zoom? Is there going to be less mandatory minicamps, OTAs? But we can't sit here and say, well, just get over it. You can't tell an ACL to just get over it.
Okay, Dan Orlovsky, you finished? Do I get to respond to that?
You get to respond.
First of all, yes, the hell I can. I just did it. You know why I did it? Because the reality of the situation is on several fronts. Number one, you collectively bargained for it. You can dismiss that, Max, all you want to, but that is a fact of life. You collectively bargained. You can talk about time out. You can always sit up there and say, well, what do they have? Because the NFL has a monopoly. Well, I assure you that there's a lot more things that the NFL owners want that they don't necessarily get because there's a collective bargaining negotiation and they got something to lose if you don't appease the players nearly enough, number one. Number two, the players want more money. Number three, I'm not saying say no to or get over it an ACL or anything like that. Let's not get literal like that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this. You as a player, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're paid for a 17-game NFL season, right, and you're injured and you can't play a particular game, you'll still get your game check. Now, obviously, you could get cut, you could get waived and things of that nature. We all understand that no matter what business that you're in. But the reality is that overall, the league doesn't get to police how you manufacture your way through the 17-game season. Coaches do this stuff all the time. General managers do this stuff all the time.
Yes, they do.
Wait a minute. Did Carson Wentz play most of the last 5 games of last season? No, he got benched. Did he get paid?
Yes.
Yes, he did. Excuse me. Did he play 16 games? No, he didn't. Did Jalen Hurts play 16 games? No, he didn't. There's plenty of teams. Did Mitchell Trubisky play 16 games? No, he didn't. I'm saying there's ways to work around it to make sure you put a product out on the field on Sunday. Alvin Kamara, I'm sure if he doesn't want to play 17 games, Sean Payton can figure out a way to make sure that he plays 16, not 17 games, but still get paid for 17 games and move forward. That's what I mean when I say get over it. There is a way organizations repeatedly and religiously show us how they know how to manipulate the rules, do conjure up workarounds and get around. I promise you, I don't think you're going to see anybody play all 17 games.
The league absolutely polices how teams get their health or build their roster.
I'm saying they get around it. Do they get around it?
You're only allowed 53 guys.
Do they get around it?
You're only allowed 53 guys. You can only have 46 dressed on game day. You actually have to designate.
Do they get around it? Do they get around it? Let me ask you a question.
No.
Hold on, I got a better question for you because you're doing NFL Live and all of that stuff. By the way, good job with that. Good job with that. You'd need help today if you were going up against me because I'm going to tell you this right now. Are you trying to tell me that every game players play, or rather the games that they miss, every single time they weren't ready to play, they couldn't have played the game? They most certainly could have. No,
I'm not going to sit here and pretend that every single time. Yes,
I'm just saying it happens.
You can
work around it.
There are some tactical decisions.
Right, you don't get paid per game.
I'd like to say something about
you don't get paid per game. That's my point.
I basically agree with you here, actually. But so I want to say something about this. The idea that the players want more money, here's how to get it, is a red herring. That's something that's meant to distract. Here's an easy way for the players to get more money. Take away the salary cap. Right? Like, why
all in support of
why
that.
is labor capped in terms of what they make? So they're never going to do that. They won't subject themselves to free market forces. That's how they all made their fortune.